Welcome to Everlasting Talk. Hello, this is Everlasting Talk with your host, Ever. Before we continue, I want you guys to know to please check out our Teespring store to get your merchandise, such as shirts and more. It'll help support the podcast and get, better technology and equipment. And also make sure to follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and YouTube. And today we're talking in the biography series about Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was a Confederate general during the American Civil War. Robert E. Lee was born on January 19th, 1807 in Westmoreland City, Virginia, to a Mr. Henry Lee and a Mrs. Anne Lee Hill. Anne Hill. His father made some financial decisions that eventually put him in jail, and eventually his father would escape to the West Indies. Robert himself would actually end up in the military, going to West Point in 1825, eventually being in the second in his class and commissioned a brevet second lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers. Robert E. Lee eventually met and married Mary Ann Randolph on June 30th, 1831, great granddaughter of Martha Washington. Yeah, so she was a relative of Martha Washington and Mary, in the family of George Washington. That's really cool. They had 7 children, 3 boys and 4 girls. During the Mexican American War, he was a chef, and on the march uh, from Veracruz to Mexico City, he also aided in a general key victory in the war. Lee and Grant, eventually his rival, worked together until the end of the war in 1848. He would go he would go ahead and take some time with his wife, and then he was appointed super of the military academy in West Point, serving for 3 years, and then went to Texas to protect settlers from Native American tribes. He was supposed to free the slaves on the plains, nearly leading to a revolt, selling many to a slave trader. His views on slavery, however, have changed throughout the years, saying that it was evil to a necessary evil. As time went on, his views strengthened. Consider the Emancipation Proclamation as savage and brutal. In 1869, he opposed the Confederacy, calling it an unconstitutional um, constitutional cesspool of the founding fathers. Supported the Credian um, compromise that protected slavery. Was offered command of the Confederacy in 1861, but turned it down. He was asked to attack Virginia, couldn't do it, and resigned because he's from Virginia. So it's kind of like, why would he attack his own state, his own colony or state? The commanding Virginia Army and Navy against the Union. So he pretty much he was told like, I want you to take control of this, so you could go against the Union in Virginia, but taking control of the Army and Navy. He eventually would become the commander of North Virginia from 1862 to 1863. So he did resign, but eventually he did get another position. Robert E. Lee, he kept winning and repeatedly go strengthening his way to Washington D.C., invading Maryland and Pennsylvania on his way. The Battle of Antietam, he suffered heavy losses and actually returned and actually won the Battle of Fredericksburg and losing eventually at Gettysburg. That's where the Gettysburg came into play. He wanted to resign but was denied time and time again. Never recovered from those losses he had at Fredericksburg and Gettysburg, and the North kept winning and winning and winning, and many of his army kept deserting. Um, Eventually driven out of Richmond and surrendering on April 9th, 1865, to his former friend Ulysses S. Grant, General Grant. He issued his resignation, and after the war, they wanted to arrest him or punish him for treason. against the United States because Confederacy was anti, against the United States. So, but um, he eventually did not get not get punished or get prosecuted for treason. He lost his he lost his mansion at the Curtis Lee Mansion, and eventually turned into Arlington National Cemetery. So Arlington National Cemetery is where he lived. Became president of Washington College and received amnesty, so he wasn't punished. He was actually he got a statue on September 28th, 1870, and died on October 12th, 1970, from pneumonia. And he was buried at Washington Lee University. But during recent times, his statues have been taken down. Um, there's one that was taken. The Robert E. Lee SS one was renamed. The um, the statue in Charlottesville, Virginia, was removed. It was historic. It had no link to the city, so they just kind of felt like it was kind of a waste of a time. And also, white supremacists. There was a white supremacist movement there. So yeah, they got rid of it in July 2021. There's one on in New Orleans that was installed in 1884. It was removed on May 2017. So it was the last one of the Confederate monuments in New Orleans, and it was to be taken down. There's stained glass window in the Washington National Cathedral that showed Robert E. Lee on horseback at Chancellorsville, to honor Stonewall Jackson. But eventually, it was removed on September 17th. The cathedral eventually decided to keep the window because of historical context. His bust, the Hall of Fame of Great Americans, is now in Bronx College. So it's kind of weird. Like he got part of the Hall of Fame of Great Americans when he was in a Confederacy that was essentially against the United States. But I guess amnesty works. His bronze statue at the University of Texas, Austin, and another one with his horse Traveler, and was taken down as well. So yeah, so a lot of statues were taken down. There's a bunch of statues. I think they're still up there. But obviously in 2021, they started taking a lot of them down. Um, there's a Lee Jackson Day in Virginia every third of the month in January until 2020 when they decided to eliminate it and make election day instead. Like I said, he had a statue at the Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, and one in Lee College. So yeah, I mean, he has a lot of statues out there. Eventually, they've been a lot of them have been torn down because we're in this movement now of getting rid of all Confederacy memorials. But I mean, overall, his ideology, he was, he obviously was part of Confederacy. Just he had some views, but at the same time, he kind of didn't agree with a lot of the things from that government. Um, so he kind of a lot of his stuff is being taken down. There's still a statue in D.C. There's still a statue at Gettysburg. There's still a statue in Richmond. There's another one in Dallas. There's one in Murray, Kentucky, on his campus. What else? But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things about him. There's biographies too. There's Robert E. Lee a biography read in 1936. There is a book called Traveler. It's about his horse's perspective of Robert E. Lee during the Civil War. That's pretty cool. It's a 1888 book by Richard Adams. There is also a biography from called The Marvel Man, Robert E. Lee and His Image in American Society, 1977. Robert E. Lee, a biography, 1995 by Emery Thomas. Robert E. Lee, A Life from 2021 from Alan Gozzello. It's like a study of his character. There's alternate histories too. Um, what else? There's like If the South Had Won the Civil War, 1960 book. The Guns of the South, 1992. There's a bunch of them too. It's like there's one where like Lee's a knight. I forgot what it's called, but it's pretty good. Alternate generals. What if he didn't lose? Lincoln's Dreams talks about Lee's point of view during the war, but and there's obviously the Robert E. Lee, the Dukes of Hazzard. They mentioned the flag. They mentioned that a lot. But yeah, Robert E. Lee. This is about him. And definitely thank you so much for joining me, guys. Make sure to follow us on our social medias. And if you want to look up your own stuff on Robert E. Lee, I'll definitely recommend that. Like the books I mentioned and the movies I mentioned, you can look those up. Obviously, make your own opinion of what you thought about him. I thought he was a great general. Obviously, I didn't believe on like his calls, but that's just me. I mean, it's not written. It's not being. This episode wasn't made to be like my opinion about him. It's just to give you a little history about who he was, and you could decide to choose how you interpret him. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. See you at the next one, and make sure to follow us on social medias, like I mentioned, and our Teespring store. Thank you so much, and have a great one. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Everlasting Talk. For more content, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Everlasting Talk. Thank you.